And the younger ones are at most proxies of these old breed power brokers or are sponsored to serve their interests. The question on youth participation in politics and governance again becomes very pertinent as another general elections approach in 2027. From the not too young to rule movement to agitations for greater youth inclusion in the scheme of things, the controversy or debate as to the credibility, capability and strength of the contemporary Nigerian youth to form or be part of a responsible political process has widened with time. It all becomes more interesting knowing that the greater of Nigeria's eligible voting population actually falls within the nation's youth bracket, and that young Nigerians are not taking real advantage of this to be in charge of their own destinies. Satellite this afternoon on OluyELETI 98.5 FM from the stables of the Broadcasting Corporation of Oyo State. Will be beaming on Nigerian politics and youth participation. That's topic for Satellite this afternoon, Nigerian politics and youth participation. My guest on the program is a versatile and articulate public affairs analyst, a barrister at law, a barrister Femi Adenito. Welcome to Satellite, sir.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Good to see you again, barrister.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Satellite is our regular Thursday afternoon current affairs discussion program on OluyELETI 98.5 FM, where we discuss topical issues affecting our dear country, our nation, our world. My name is Tola Teriba, your anchor on the program. Now to business, Barrister Adenito, and I'd like to start with this. Now, former President Olusegun Obasanjo once said that contemporary Nigerian youths are not ready to take up the responsibilities of governance. Again, more recently, he said young Nigerians should take back their country. So, what do you think he meant when he said young Nigerians should now take back their country? And how can young Nigerians take back their country?
Okay, so two questions, two in one question. So the first is, how do the young Nigerians take back their country? Yeah, well, I think that can only come through democratic process, right? Through elections, right? Through voting, and they putting their heart in the ring, contesting for elections and winning. And that's one way. But if you see how then do you take back, so the other options which might be through revolution, right? Which I don't think that's what he meant, right? Because to me, to be more modest, Obasanjo was president of Nigeria shortly in the Fourth Republic, and he also had the opportunity to reposition Nigeria. He had the chance, but we didn't really see much of it, and that could have actually set the pace for the kind of youth inclusion in governance. Although we saw that some briefly into his administration, but some of these challenges we are currently facing in Nigeria today, I would say it also is a build-up from the way the likes of Obasanjo left the country. So, yeah, so you're now referring to the youth that maybe the youths are not prepared to do that, or maybe it's trying to maybe we would like to say incite the youth in that form. But I don't think that should be the right thing, because there's a structural systems which the system has structured itself in a way that does not give the gatekeepers are preventing the youth from actually assessing the real governance. Although we've seen some cases where youths were made governors, I think in the likes of Yaya Bello, and I think now we've seen Ododo now, and we've seen some few governors who,
quite a number of them,
who came in, young guys, but and questions again will arise that do they really perform the way we expect them to? There's a whole lot of allegations when it comes to issues around mismanagement, corruption, looting, and all of that. But that doesn't also represent the youth, right? Because the youths that I know, Nigerian youths, which I see them across the world when I travel. There are so many in the US, in Europe and UK and all of that. So these are great minds of great people who really want to see Nigerian work. And I'm sure that not just abroad, we have so many of them right in Nigeria who are so passionate about a country that they want to see the country work. They are doing everything very possible to see that in Nigeria that that actually takes the voice of the young persons. Most youth are kind of frustrated as I speak now, right? So yeah, but let us examine the weight of the statement by President Obasanjo. Is it really the right statement? Yes, it's the right statement, but the question to ask is that would the youth in their self really want to take over governance without the structure? The structure is really what really matters now, because as it is now, the zero-sum politics we have, the winner takes all, right? So it's quite very difficult for the youth to really take the governance or take over government unless in this 4 years election, which we know that issues around credibility of elections is a problem. So many a times the youth, they are so passionate about aligning themselves to political party, and most of the political parties we even have in Nigeria don't even have this ideological leaning, right? So because if you look at take a cue looking at the parties we have in Nigeria currently, do you have any clear party that has a different ideology from each other? Let's speak, for instance, the APC or the ADC as we speak now. What kind of ideology is different from the other? So is there any kind of policy that's perhaps pro-poor, or policy that is intended towards economic reform and security? Everything is just same thing. The same guy, the same group of people, persons are still the ones controlling power, right? So, and even the coalition, you ask yourself a question, is there anything different? We have a policy or national youth policy, right? To what extent the president or the government as it stands has worked towards ensuring that the youth are properly included, right? So
you mentioned a frustrated youth population.
Yes, please.
Well, aside the economy, that which affects us all, why do you think Nigerian youths are frustrated? And why are they so aggressive?
The youths are frustrated because you could see even on the street, people have potentials. We have people with potentials, people with they are ready to really contribute to the system, but the system doesn't want them to contribute. The system doesn't give them the access, right? They are not properly included in governance. So when critical decision is taken in the country, they are not properly consulted, and they are not part of the whole process. And so many times you find unemployment challenges, you find security problems, you find youths who are poor, who are even unable to feed themselves. So they are out of jobs, they are being used as perhaps tools in the hands of political gladiators who, during elections, they only use them or find them useful at that time. And that's where you find the influx of youth in Japan. They always want to travel, right? They want to travel because they see that as an escape route from the country. There's recently you see that I think was it on Twitter, someone was celebrating. I think he got a visa to abroad, and he feels that is the way to go. The current youth at the moment feel that the best way to get out of this country, to get out of these challenges we are having, is to leave the country, because of course the politicians, the bad leaders we have, they have kept the youth in this kind of problem, right? So
you know, Bryce, something doesn't add up for me.
Okay,
all
please.
you have said, the challenges facing the youth, non-inclusion in the scheme of things, and I wonder, like I said, something doesn't add up for me. How can it be? Nigerian youth form the majority of the nation's eligible voting population.
Yes, we do.
According to credible data and
That's
statistics. Correct. So how come we still lament poor leadership over the years? Regarding the youth, how come we still lament this non-inclusion? Is it that this voting population, which the youth making up the majority, do not perform their civic responsibilities as expected? Or is it that they have a penchant to invest their votes and their future in the wrong people?
Yes, I think it's a mix of all, right? Because the crux of it is that lack of internal party democracy, right? That's one. Another thing that you need to also consider is that not that the youth are not ready to participate, most times they have been disenfranchised. You saw even the lead up to the last election, there was a movement. Before then, we saw the NSAS movement, right? The youth were desirous of having a change in bad leadership, bad governance, and they mobilized themselves and they were making one demand. And you see the way the system actually kicked against them, right? So it did not make it work. Again, they formed themselves during the obedient group and all of that. And not, by the way, I'm not a member of any political party, so I need to state that clear. So they did that, and during the election towards 2023, we saw how the whole thing went. They were all disappointed, and that was the era when you hear that go to court, because of course the party who have won believe that they have strong connections to influence justice, right? So again, justice again is for sale in Nigeria, and sadly, I have to say this because even I'm a lawyer, so it's for sale. Because when you find out that, look at what's happening now in PDP again, right? So you will see that as it stands now, there's a big issue around where does the structure of the parties, although the case is gone on further appeal, right? So, but the question is that participation is big problem, right? Because even when the youth believe that they want to be part of the system, for some reasons they are being disenfranchised, or they are not given the access, or those who have hijacked the party structure don't allow credibility to flow, right? So this is a serious kind of issue which you feel it's not just going to be addressed by just what I don't think we're going to have a kind of a very credible election in 2027, right? So the elections are coming in 2027, right? So I don't think that we would have that kind of credibility, and this is one of the reasons why it's a problem, because development as freedom, which someone like Amartya Sen, the Nobel Laureate scholar, said, is one of which is participation, and participation is one of the key indicators where you could see a country that the people would be part. They want a developed system. They are passionate about a country that will work. But sadly, if it's not working, so what happens, right? So the youth, sadly, they are part of these the people who are not properly considered, because when critical decision making is taken, the youth are almost left out. Not just the youth. I think, to be fair, I think generally Nigerians, poor Nigerians, who are not properly included in the old design.
But do you also think the youth could also share part of the blame? I mean, as to the fact that they might currently have a stereotyped idea of what things are, as to what the realities are. And how do I mean? Many Nigerians, well, including and especially young people themselves, from what I've seen, they feel it is only youth with questionable sources of wealth that would be able to do politics, especially when it comes to running for elective positions. Or at best, we could have young people sponsored by older ones whose sources of income are also questionable. Now I'm talking about the cost of doing politics in Nigeria, and then the youth seems to have this, I think, a wrong notion that it's only those that have.
Mr. Teriba, it's not a wrong notion. I think the truth is, you need power, you need finance, right, to be into politics in the first instance. And the way the system is structured, godfatherism is one of it. Like in the current state, let's use Oyo State for an example, right? And the current governor, whoever wants to be the governor of this state, must surely do have the backing of the governor, right? So that's very important, right? So let's even move away from it.
But then we can beam the spotlight on the governor's sources of wealth. We know he's a businessman. We know he's a business. We know what he did before he went into politics.
That's correct.
That source of wealth is not questionable.
It's not questionable.
But what I'm saying here is that many young people seem to believe that if you have that kind of money, that it has to be.
But there's no how you, and that's why I make the regulation, a guideline on the amount you could spend for elections, right? For instance, you want to contest for election for the post of for the governor, right? You need to be putting in about 1 billion to make this work, right? To make it achievable, because it takes a while, because you are going to move around the 36 local government across the states, right? And you want to be president of Nigeria. You are talking about perhaps times 36 of that amount, right? So this is the reality. So anyone who thinks that he could perhaps just make this quite easy for him, it's not like politics is expensive, right? And that's why we have the godfathers who now come to place and say they feel entitled and they want to strike a deal with their godson. Remember the case in Rivers State with similarly Fubara and the minister Wike, right? So Wike. So what those are the kind of things, because when you are talking about access to those kind of a position, to even buy the party primary forms, right, domination form, is money to do the groundwork. So I guess they say politics is local, but it goes beyond just that, because there's a whole lot of financing that goes beyond across, which we may not even be privy to so many of them. Deals are being made and all of that, and of course we have the dominant party structures which youth can only run on and can make it their chances to be more brighter. For instance, if anyone wants to maybe contest for the forthcoming election, you must position yourself either in ADC or in the APC. Now we don't even have PDP as it stands now, right?
Everybody's jumping boats.
Everybody's jumping boats. So this is kind of a problem that when it comes to access to that kind of position, right? So another thing again is, which is you alluded to, which is the financing. To contest for election requires a lot of financial grant and all of that, because you would not want to. It's a whole lot of bargain that goes along, and even the campaign process also requires funding. So that's why you see youths they are shying away from it unless they get the backing of those who are currently in the position to be able to reposition themselves again, right?
But why wouldn't Nigeria use their
numbers
at the ballot to get what they want, even if they cannot participate directly, even if they cannot carry the ballot box themselves and say, I want you to vote for me? Why can't they use their population, voting population, to make things different?
Yes, they can. That if only the system can be credible, elections can be credible, can be free and fair, right? But when we talk about the structure, and when we talk about the elites who they know how to keep, who are how to hijack party structure. Remember, just even in PDP right now, right, they are still having this back and front. Now ADC is still having some their potential that there might even be some kind of challenges within the party structure. So it's all about, when it comes to that time, what happens, right? So the youths, of course, they have the numbers. They also leverage on using social media to mobilize themselves. Also remember, it's also very easier.
Social media.
Yeah, social media is also a tool, right, that they use in order to mobilize themselves. But sadly enough, because of the lack of the credibility in the electoral process, the youths most times shy away, or they believe that their vote will not count, and there's always the system will always rig them out. So that perception, and also the hazard that when it comes to politics, right? So in this part of the country, right? So it's always the use of force. Those other group who want to harm their groups, and all of that to harm certain, there's a whole lot of cases when it comes to elections time, the violence that goes along with politics and all of that, and that's why a lot of people say it's dirty. So, well, for those youth who are genuinely concerned about making a change, yes, there are chances. We have the numbers. Yes, they have the numbers, because it's a very growing population, and the youth perhaps do have the numbers, and they are passionate about changing and being included into the governance. But as it stands now, I don't see the kind of movement towards that. It was there before, maybe shortly after the NSAS, but as it stands now, I don't really think the youth are so much passionate about it.
Okay, but the average Nigerian youth would rather be on social media on election day rather than them going out to vote. And do you think the politicians actually know this? And you know why I asked this question, Barrister?
Yeah.
Politicians and political gladiators hardly bother about the youth. I mean, election time, they hardly take their campaigns directly to the youths of voting age. You hardly see them visiting the campuses, youth-based organizations, and other places where young Nigerians can be found. Rather, they prefer to approach these young Nigerians of voting age through proxies that may be of questionable character. So again, like I said, like I asked, is it that the politicians know that well, the youths have the number, but maybe they won't actually make use of that. So that's why they are not seeing the electoral or voter value of young Nigerians.
I think they see it. I think they know the power, and they try as much as possible to fractionalize the group, and that's why even we see NAS today now, the association that should be looking after the youths and the university students. You see that they have different fractions in most times, and they don't actually speak in one voice, right? So it's very easy for the leaders to pick and choose, or to cause division across those groups. You see, and that's why again you don't see that the youth most times speak in one voice. But I believe that the whole thing was going to change in this forthcoming election, because I'm looking at the whole of reawakening. And again, why again that the politicians towards the lead up to the elections, you find them that most of they take the campaign more on to the market women, to the those who are not quite literate, to the motor parks,
to the street urchins,
and they do that a lot because they believe that those education again is power, right? So when you go to the universities, they would of course want to interrogate some of your policies and see the manifestos and see it, looking at it with their merits. That again is a problem, because when you talk about the youth in the university or in the tertiary institutions, they are quite more informed. They understand their rights. They understand how to go about it, and they are pushing for it. But I believe, I'm guessing that it's going to be a totally different thing when it comes to the forthcoming elections now, right? Because the youth now are becoming aware, because the suffering is becoming too much. I don't know what's your perception about the current state of things when it comes to Nigeria as it stands now. Yeah, because the youth believe now that the economy is not working, security is a problem, and the poverty is in the increase, power is a big challenge, lack of employment opportunity and all of that. And yes, the youths perhaps will be warming up, and they will be making some kind of ideological leaning. And it's up to more of the institutions now to see how to, especially the tertiary institutions, to align themselves with a candidate that perhaps have the youth in its agenda, or more committed to a citizen-driven kind of policies, right? So,
now that you mentioned the ability of the average Nigerian politician, the penchant to want to divide young people and stop them from speaking with one voice, especially those on university campuses that are eligible to vote. Now, I remember, the once vibrant Nigerian Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, used to be very vibrant under the military, but now it looks to me like they are more of appendages of political parties. I was driving I said it before, the particular program. I was driving along a particularly lonely road here in Ibadan one day, and a vehicle just shot past me, an exotic car, the kind used by governors. And I looked at the plate number. I was wondering, why is this guy driving so fast? I looked at the plate number. I saw NANS 01. And I was wondering, fully tinted glasses with tinted windows, and then a fully air-conditioned vehicle. I was wondering that. In those days, it used to be one when I was in school, it used to be one ragged ramshackle bus like that. You just see Students' Union Government written on it. So there I did this kind of vehicles now. And then sometimes those that call themselves NANS executives, I see people looking as old as myself.
Yeah.
So just to buttress what you are saying, that maybe the politicians do have a stranglehold already on young Nigerians on the campus, so they don't really bother about them.
Yes.
And then so
I think it's dead to unionism, even in as we're speaking in Nigerian context. Yes, not just about the NANS alone, right? So even look at the trade union, the TUC, even so many other unions are not very as vibrant as it used to be in those days, right? So things have actually changed. The youths are no more speaking in one voice, and sometimes they sell their conscience, perhaps because of the you know, in every system you always have the bad eggs, right? So that's not to say that everyone in the NAS system or the student union are corrupt, right? Or every youth are not corrupt, but it's a perception that those who find themselves in those positions will always want to take advantage of it. And yes, and the thing is, the whole idea is about positioning, and the politicians do use those groups, perhaps that are allegiance, that pay some allegiance to them in the course of the election, the run up to the election, so that they will use it to them for their advantage, because everything is about looking at how to capture those key leaders, right? So even in unionism these days, right, it's not as very viable as it used to be in the past. Now the vice chancellor, for instance, in University of Ibadan, where I did my law, we have a grip on the union group, the unionism. So so many union groups have been suspended. Student union bodies have been suspended, right? They don't even have that independence that it used to be, right? In those days of, I think the days of OluyELETI OFEole, that they could speak, they could be very agitated, and they could make strong demands and insist on it. Those days of Bado Nimode, it was one of the student union leader, and in University of Ibadan, and in those times you find that student leaders of those days, right, it made, when they were going to have this Anglo Defense Pact, Nigeria was supposed to sign that. It was the union group that stood up against such kind of policies and said, no, we are not going to sign this Anglo Defense Pact because it does not suit or favor Nigeria. You cannot allow the military base to be established within Nigeria, right? So then we have strong unions, strong union leaders, but things have changed over time, right? But union groups, and they are being decimated, they are being factionalized. And when the union leaders are not doing the biddings of the vice chancellor or the university government board, what do? they shut it off. They just suspend the group, right? So again, our unionism is for sale, right? So we don't have a strong union group that will speak in one voice. And one time you see any union leader in any institution, they will tell them, right, you can't make any agitation here, you can't do any protest, because if you do, you're only going to be elongating your stay in the university. And you see, these days union leaders don't, or their groups don't speak for their students as it used to be.
You know, again, for me, that's odd, because it's odd in the sense that much of this is happening under democratic setting, and in the past we had the vibrant students union bodies that stood toe to toe with the military government, with the military machinery, and they did not mind going to jail.
That's
they
correct.
did not mind them having their stay in the universities elongated. So I wonder, why do we now have? Why do the authorities now have this stranglehold? The politicians, how come they now have this stranglehold on the students' body?
They do, because they always use them to their advantage. They always look for any small holes to be able to capture. It's about state capture, zero sum, right? Zero sum politics. You want to make sure that those key leaders in those positions, they will hijack them. If it was possible, the whole idea was to also regulate even social media, so that they would not be able to speak they would not be able to have a voice at all. Right, so why are they quite interested in those union leaders? Because they don't want any form of movement or protest that can spring off as a result. On a normal ideal setting, with the current hike in things, right, in Nigeria, I was saying somewhere else that it costs even more to live in Nigeria than to live in New York. It costs more. You look at the amount you have to pay to buy fuel, look at everything. Things are quite expensive, right? It's very difficult, right? So, and the leaders, they know that one of the first line of call is the union groups, right? Imagine all the universities we have in Nigeria activate their unionism, and they protest against this kind of harsh government policies. What kind of changes we will see? It's going to be radical, right? Radical change. But the government know that the youths in those institutions are quite important to them, and they try as much as possible to gag them, so that so they look for how to find some 11th columnists among them, and they a person's conscience. And again, we alluded to the fact that even those in NAS, some of them are even in their 50s, in their 40s. so that's also one way of how to control, regulate their affairs, right? So we don't have that kind of voice the way we used to have it. Times have changed. Corruption is one of the problem, and I think we can list them. We can go on and on.
Right, program is Searchlight on OluyELETI 98.5 FM from the stables of the Broadcasting Corporation of Oyo State, and we are discussing Nigerian politics and youth participation. Let's have this short break and we'll be back. Right, still Searchlight on OluyELETI 98.5 FM, and we are discussing Nigerian politics and youth participation. My guest on the program is a versatile and articulate public affairs analyst, a barrister at law, Barrister Femi Adenito, and our highly esteemed audience out there, we welcome your questions and contributions on the program. Number to call 070 5555 1985. 070-5555-1985. That's about to call to be part of Searchlight this afternoon. Like I said, we welcome your questions and contributions on the program. Right, Barrister Denison,
yes.
Since the Jonathan administration, where, well, a formidable number of youths have been in the Federal Executive Council, but whether or not they have lived up to expectation or made the desired difference is another question entirely. What do you think?
We've seen even the case. I think Beta Edu was the humanitarian minister we had. Remember, you have the woman, right? You saw the lot of corruption allegation that came leveled against her, and what happened afterward. Right, so that's an example of one of the youths that was there, a woman, right? We had that case. That's not to say that every youth is like that. We had even governor, we mentioned Yaya Bello. We saw what happened after he left office as a governor, right? We have issues around issues of corruption still pending. So we have many cases like that, right? So I think Bosun Tijani, which is is also doing well, right? He's doing well. So not in all cases we have issues of youth not doing well. We have many cases where youths are also in position of governance and they are making the right impact and the right kind of change that we want. But what are we really looking at? What is the focus, right? The crux should be how then do we have more youths becoming part, particularly we are talking about youths that have the concept of the development in mind and the passion to steer up the development of the country, right? Not just those ones who are so concerned about personal aggrandizement or enrichment of themselves and their family and all of that. So what have we seen so far since Jonathan, since the Jonathan left governance? So we saw that some youth have been included in the not too young to rule act was being passed, and of course that have given brings alteration to the constitution of Nigeria, and it also opens the door for youth now to contest to the position of the president, the governor, and in other kinds of positions right across, and it's also giving the youth even the access to enter into governance, right? So, but are we now seeing that kind of numbers or that kind of much impact that the intention of the Not Too Young to Rule Act that came into effect? Have we seen that the effect of that provisions, right? So maybe not yet. Maybe towards the 2027 elections, we will see more of its impact, right? So, fingers crossed. Let's look forward to what might happen in the coming months. Things might change, right?
070-5555-1985. We're about to call. We welcome your questions and contributions on Searchlight this afternoon. The topic for discussion is Nigerian youth participation in politics, Nigerian politics, and the youth participation. Now, let's travel back a little in history. Many of the past icons of nationhood, especially the First Republic, were very young when they held positions of national responsibility. We can talk about the Nnamdi Azikiwe's, Ahmadu Bello's, Tafawa Balewa's, Obafemi Awolowo's, etc. Now, how come these legends have not really replicated themselves? What went wrong along the line? For it is expected that there should have been candles that would light other candles.
Yes.
Down through the generations.
Yes, that was supposed to be the intention. I think as time progressed, and because of the military rule that came up, actually distorted a whole lot of things, right? So there was no real grants for maybe perhaps mentorship, perhaps that opportunity to really pass the baton to the young ones. So we saw even the military rules, right? Someone like Muhammadu Buhari, I think, was quite young when he was the military head of state, right? We also had even the likes of Olusegun Obasanjo, so many of them, even IBB, even what's his name now, Yakubu Gowon, right? They were all young, right, when they took over governance, when they were heads of state. So that itself, and this is the same set of people also who found themselves, and some, the likes of Obasanjo became the president. Someone